What other topics are there to talk about?
Okay, so we covered the Roman Catholic thing, and that ended ever so abruptly. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick was again I wanted to talk about like these Western Rite prayer books that I received in the mail, and so I will show them here. To one of they're kind of redundant, and I'll explain why. Um, One of them was this Saint Colman prayer book, which is by this Father Michael Wood, and the other one was the Liturgy of Saint John the Divine, which is actually in the St. Colman Prayer Book, so you don't need it. Am I recommending these by holding these up? No, I'm telling you what to avoid. You do not want to purchase this stuff, and I'm going to tell you why. The Liturgy of St. John the Divine, by the way, if you look at the, I don't know, did I send you the file, Vladika, for the St. Colman book from 2008?
No, can you put it up on the screen?
I can do that. Let me get it over to. Yeah, I can put it up on the screen. But this is gonna. Let's do that. Let me see here. Let me open it up somewhere in a PDF viewer, and just get that ready. But yeah, this has been moving pretty quick today. Let me see here. Downloads. There we go. Okay, so let's move it over here. This is one of the most strangely okay, I'm gonna share it. 1 second. I always press the wrong button. Okay, present, share screen, window. There we go. All right, so this is what is known as the Shorter St. Colman Prayer Book. Shout out to one of our supporters who actually sent me this copy of the PDF. This one, as you will noted, is dated 2008, whereas the edition I'm dealing with is 2022. But here's what's going to be really cool about this. You're going to notice right off the bat the bait and switch. And what I'm going to tell you right now, and this is why the whole St. John the Divine Liturgy, in the 2008 version of this prayer book, this is the introduction from Metropolitan Hilarion, who was then Archbishop Hilarion back then. He just reuses the same introduction over and over. Now, as we get to the kind of the table of contents, you'll notice that it says here the Divine Liturgy English and the Divine Liturgy
prayer book. It says it looks kind of like a rituale from the table of contents.
Yeah, pretty much. It's closer to a ritual. But in any case, this has notes regarding the Sarum liturgy, and then it has later on it has notes regarding the English liturgy. And the English liturgy basically is based upon the Anglican prayer book. But in this version, the 2022 version, because of the fact that so many people were complaining about that, they had to hide it. And so they put it here, and I'm going to see if let me just see if I can just.
Okay, so one of the problems here, if you note, he says notes regarding the English liturgy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the second paragraph, he says those guidelines referring to the 1904, 1905 observations on the Russian observations on the prayer book, which was prepared by a committee in Petrograd, St. Petersburg, I believe.
Yeah.
It says those guidelines have been here applied. I'll turn my fan off. And those guidelines have here been applied to the liturgies of 1549 and 1718, themselves both truncated versions of the Sarum original, and here including much of the Sarum canon. Now, when he says 1549, he's talking, that's the first prayer book of Edward VI. That's the first Book of Common Prayer. 1718, that I think is a reference to the non-juror liturgy composed by the Anglican non-jurors in 1718 during the usages controversy. That's this sort of obscure point of Anglican history, though it wasn't obscure at the time. So I should point out that I am not sure if it's correct to call. In fact, I do not believe it is at all correct to refer to the 1549 prayer Book of Common Prayer, which is admittedly not as bad as the later versions, I guess you can say, but it's still a Protestant text, a truncated version of the Sarum text, because the canon, the Eucharistic canon they have, is basically a combination of Protestant mutilation of the Roman canon or Serum canon, if he uses the phrases, the Roman canon, and just inventions of their own on their own part. And for example, they abolished the gradual, the Alleluia, the sequence, the tract in that text as well. I think they abolished the communion antiphon. The offertory was abolished. Now, it's true when they first tried to introduce the Anglican prayer book, the Protestant prayer book in 1549, a large portion of the English Roman Catholic clergy rejected it, but many of them tried to use it and just use old Serum Rite books to meld with it. But that was formally condemned. All right, that wasn't what they were supposed to be doing technically. So it wasn't like they intended that to be done. So I simply that in the 1718 text is an attempt to take the 49 prayer book, and I think they added things from like the Liturgy of St. James and the liturgy from the Apostolic Constitutions, because a lot of those older High Church Anglicans sort of were more interested in like the so-called Clementine liturgy and the Liturgy of St. James and the Apostolic Constitutions, and combining that with the Protestant text. So, I think that's not, in fact, a very accurate statement at all to make about it. He says, ideally, the memorials ought to be placed after the Sorsum Corda sequence, immediately before the prayer, which begins, "All glory be to the Almighty God," as this would reflect the correct liturgical order. However, this was not allowed for in the 1907 guidelines. And therefore, he's referring again to the prayer. I think the prayer, they call it the prayer for the whole estate of Christ Church, that the Protestant forces created and put into their own version of the canon. Of course, it's not really the canon of the Mass. We shouldn't even call it that. Though later in the 1552 prayer book, they kind of distorted it. So it just seems to me very strange, this continuous attempt to sort of say that the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, which, by the way, people died in England.
This is a
people who were pre-Reformation, who grew up using like the Hereford Rite or the Sarum Rite or the York Rite or what have you. They were like hung or killed because they simply did not. They knew the Protestant prayer book was not the old religion. All right, and they had to terrorize the country for years and trying to even enforce the 1559 prayer book thereafter under Elizabeth. So it's to me again, it's to say that although they accepted it, well, I mean, I guess they were going to be executed, and so there's sort of this history that's not being talked about, that they went around destroying relics of saints. The liturgical ordo was completely destroyed that had existed even before. Even of course, I mean, it was separated from the church after the Great Schism and such, but that's basic liturgical ordo had existed in Britain even before the time of St. Augustine. All right, going back to the Celtic churches. Okay, so I don't know. Again, there's this strange obsession with the Book of Common Prayer. Maybe because some of the prose. I mean, some of the prose is not terrible, but a good prosaic composition does not alone make something suitable for worship in the church.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's simply not a proper way to look at the material. I mean, we could, if you wanted to, we could do a whole episode. I could just pull up the 1549 prayer book, 1550, I could go through the entire text, and I can point out large numbers of differences between that and the old pre-Reformation rite, which is substantially the same in most areas to the pre-Schism rite, except for certain major points.
Well, I will say this.
But to me, again, it's continuously strange and annoying. Considering the history of the Reformation ending in England. And I was just reading today a text by Archbishop Seraphim Sobolev, who wrote a little booklet called on the question of the union between the Anglican and Orthodox churches.
Oh, I remember that one.
And he goes through it, and he basically he knew a lot more than a lot of people give him credit for. And he points out that, when Anglicans had conferences with the Orthodox in the 1890s or something like that, they'd always end up saying that they agreed with the Orthodox. But then when they would hold conferences with like Lutherans, they'd always end up saying they agreed with the Lutherans. All right. Well, that can't be. There's something going on here. But I can't remember what it was. Archbishop Seraphim made several significant points. There's everything from the fact that, anyway, I don't want to get too far off, but I would recommend people read that text if they're interested in that question.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I will point out here is that, as I mentioned, the text I have is a 2022 edition. So this set of notes is actually not in the newer work. It's actually replaced because I presume that the Liturgy of St. Theodore is, in fact, the English, the prayer book liturgy. And I think I went through the pages with you. And the notes on that are much shorter. It literally just says, and we can check the accuracy here. This is the liturgy which developed through the first millennium in the British Isles. The British Church claimed that it originated from a letter sent them by St. John the Divine from... Oh, no, this is for the Stowe Missal. It's even worse. Regarding the St. Theodore liturgy, he wrote, essentially, this is little different from Sarum, from which it directly derives, with input from the 1549 and non-juring work. The ceremonial is identical. It's intended to implement the spirit of the 1907 Moscow Synod critique of the Book of Common Prayer. That's it. That's all it has. Like the whole thing.
That's the note on the Stowe text, it says?
I haven't gotten to the Stowe text. No, that's the note on the St. Theodore text or the prayer book text.
Well, that's not accurate. From what I remembered you showing me of the text, because I don't have this, of the so-called Liturgy of St. Theodore that Father Michael invented.
It is the English liturgy we're looking at right now.
It's just an adapted Anglican service. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they called that the Anglican Missal or the English Missal or the American Missal when they took the older Reformation or Tridentine texts in many cases and kind of forced them into a prayer book. Percy Dearmer was sort of involved in this in the late 1800s. There were several others who tried to do that.
Right, but
ultimately it was simply not something that was not going to mesh.
Yeah, it's going to get worse.
And St. Theodore of Canterbury did not write the Anglican Book of Common Prayer.
Obviously, no.
That simply did not. He used the Roman Mass, as was practiced in the 7th century.
Again, Reader John, thank you for that. We do appreciate donations, and we do need them. It's going to... Things are always moving forward. But wait, I want to get to the St. John the Divine one. You're going to love this.
Okay.
This is the notes regarding the liturgy of St. John the Divine, which is not in the 2008 edition. This is the liturgy in which first developed through the first millennium in the British Isles. The British Church claimed that it originated from a letter sent them by St. John the Divine from Ephesus, circa AD 980 to 90. The present version is a translation done by Dr. West of Oxford from the quote-unquote Stowe Missal. That book is dated as being commenced circa AD 600 with its last alteration circa AD 900. It is therefore a wholly Orthodox liturgy and is thought to have continued in use by British refugees from the Norman invasion under Constantinople until around AD 1550 to 1600. The ceremonials could be as for Sarum.
Well, here's the thing: if they have material about that, I'd be interested in it. I've never heard that. I would like to see. I'm not trying to make it. I'm not being funny. If they have material like that, that'd be great.
That's my point. That's my point. You would think that
that would be a major discovery that you need to share with people.
But that's my point. It's such a huge discovery that it's impossible to accept. They're basically saying this claim is British refugees from the Norman invasion in the 11th century were there for 400 years in Constantinople doing the Stowe liturgy.
Well, it sounds to me what they're probably referring to are the Anglo-Saxon refugees who would not have regarded themselves as British, by the way.
I'm just saying what it said. It says British refugees.
The Anglo-Saxon refugees who I believe left after there was a rising in the north in 1070 or so. There was this one great rising by the Old English nobles and thanes and people against the Normans. They fell. There was the harrowing of the north. And I think a large portion of them did leave on ships. and they ended up showing up. They did show up at Constantinople sometime, I think, what, the 1080s or something, and they showed up just in time, like to actually prevent part of the city from, not the city from falling, but part of the Byzantine army from being destroyed. Like these, like hundreds of English ships, Anglo-Saxon ships showed up, and I think either fought the Normans who were attacking, or fought the Turks or something. And what I do recall happened is the Byzantine government gave them leave to settle up on parts of the Black Sea. You know how like the Black Sea connects to parts of like the Caucasus?
Yeah.
There was somewhere they did settle up there. All right. But we don't really know a lot more information. I think there are some few references to that.
But they weren't doing the Celtic Missal anyway.
No, they would have. I mean, in fact, they actually got bishop. They had bishops sent them from Hungary and such. So, no, I don't think there's any evidence that they were doing that. I mean, to be honest, yeah. So when they speak about Dr. West's translations, okay, that's fine. He did a translation. I'm not saying that's bad, and I'm not attacking the still missal. It's not really a missal, by the way. In fact, he seems to have, from what you say, put it into quotation marks, which is good, actually, because it's really a mass book with a few mass propers. It doesn't have a lectionary in it. I think it has a service for baptism and chrismation in it, for communion of the sick.
Yeah.
Maybe a few other texts. It was like for a priest to travel around with somewhere in northern Britain or something. But I now what letter they're talking about. I would like to supposedly St. John sending to Britain in the 1st century. I'd have to have more information. That almost sounds like something someone half remembered from that was said at the Synod of Whitby when they had the debate about how to do the tonsure and how to calculate Pascha, and some of the northern British or northern Celtic clergy and some of the Saxons who had gone along with it argued that their tradition came from like St. John about how to celebrate Pascha. And I think the opposite side argued that their tradition came from St. Peter. All right. Like that's the Orthodox way to celebrate Pascha. And the king was like, well, then St. Peter was, a more important disciple than St. John. We're going to go with that. But I don't know what letter they're specifically referencing, other than maybe some half-remembered material from Whitby or something like that. And of course, Whitby is a point in which some extreme Celticists, and I'm not attacking Celticists, but some extreme Celticists will use to, and Mulroney Dowling was unfortunately one of those, even though he did some interesting work.
Yeah, he was very.
Yes,
he did a lot of good work.
I think he was a serious person, even though I disagree with him on many points. Yeah. That they would say sort of like Whitby was the point in which like the sort of like heresy gradually began to filter in. But that would be odd because they simply were reasserting the canonical date for Pascha. It was simply being done at Whitby in 664, I believe. And remember, Ireland, most of Ireland at the Synod of Magdalene, like in the 620s, had actually accepted the corrected Paschal calculation date. Because just for reference, what had happened is that contact had been cut off with Alexandria. People sort of had to prepare their own Paschal calculation tables. And they were using oftentimes old recycled cycles, which didn't get updated. But in regards to the Celtic Rite, if you read any material on that, it's not entirely clear. And for example, we have a Father Felix in Britain who did a video in Scotland who did a video on this. He talked
on the Diverse Other Monks channel.
Yes, and it's like he did a very good. It was last year a very good video about the problems with this claim that the Celtic Rite was like this universal thing done by all the Celtic churches and all were in Anglo-Saxon England, etc., etc. Because remember, you're going to when you look at the Celtic Rite, there really isn't a lot of material,
right?
And I suspect that's because not that people destroyed it, but that it wasn't really a rite in the way we think of a rite. All right, like the Ambrosian Rite or the Mozarabic Rite.
There wasn't a specific use; it was just kind of.
I think it was. I think they were usages. All right, but within the same general Western Rome, right? Because remember, there's some. I believe there were some early medieval texts, Irish texts. I'd have to pull them up now. Maybe from the Irish tracts from the Mass or something like that. that say during the time of the Second Order of Irish Saints, like Ireland accepted the Roman canon, various changes happened to them. If anything, the older Celtic liturgy prior to the introduction of the Roman canon and Roman features via Britain would have been something like the Gallican liturgy or thereafter and such. But I just think there's just too much of of overemphasis on this subject. So we could talk more about it if you put the text up or what have you, or whatever you want to do, Father.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I just wanted to kind of give an overview as to why this particular book is not trustworthy in terms of what you were talking about with Western Rite usages. The stuff that we do in our synod, quite simply, is heavily researched and documented. It's not based upon legends and or what's the word I'm looking for? Conjectures. Yeah, conjecture, speculation, etc. So, I mean, I think that was good for a general warning, just because if you know the origin of a text, you know what the text is about.
Because anything that's going to use liturgical prayers invented by the Protestant reformers, which is the prayer book, that's not